Just imagine, just one can, a handful of dried beans, 5 minutes, and you're done. After a few days, you eat food with 6 times the amount of antioxidants, 27 times more vitamin C, and almost 4 times more folic acid. NASA sent them into space to protect astronauts from radiation. Ancient civilizations relied on this tiny green seed for thousands of years. Ayurvedic healers called it the king of beans for its strength. Germination turns a simple seed into a living pharmacy. The Western world has almost completely forgotten this knowledge. All you need is water, air, and patience to unlock it. In this video, you will learn how to do it in 5 minutes. 1 can. A handful of dried mung beans in 5 minutes. After 3 to 5 days, you eat live food that contains 6 times more antioxidants, 27 times more vitamin C, and nearly 4 times more folate than the original seed. No soil, no garden, no sunlight required. NASA sent them to the International Space Station in 2021 to see if they could protect astronauts from space radiation. Researchers at Cornell University discovered that the simple act of sprouting created an explosion of disease-fighting compounds that did not exist in the dry seed. Restaurants across Asia have been serving them for centuries. You can grow unlimited quantities for the price of a bag of dried beans that cost less than a cup of coffee. 2 things explain why almost no one in the West does this at home. One has to do with a cultural blind spot about what squirrels actually look like. The other concerns a $4.5 billion industry that profits when you believe fresh living food requires refrigerated trucks. If you've ever stood in a grocery store staring at wilted produce shipped 1,000 miles away and wondering why growing your own protein seems impossible, you're about to discover something that will change the way you think about food forever. There is a seed so ancient that it predates recorded history. So nutritionally dense that sprouting it multiplies the healing compounds 4, 6, even 27 times. So fast-growing that it goes from a hard, dry ball to a crunchy, living food in less time than it takes most people to read a book. These are called mung beans. The story of how this seed has fed civilizations for over 4,000 years has been confirmed by modern science as one of the most powerful functional foods on Earth. It was tested aboard the International Space Station, and yet remains virtually unknown as a home staple in the Western world. This is one of the weirdest food stories you've never heard. Around 1,500 years BC, in the river valleys of the Indian subcontinent, farmers began growing a small green legume that quietly became one of the most important sources of protein in human history. Archaeological evidence suggests that mung beans were among the earliest domesticated crops in South Asia. The ancient Vedic texts, some of the oldest written sources in any living language, mention them. In Ayurvedic medicine, mung beans occupied a special status. They were considered the most easily digestible of all legumes. They were prescribed to the sick, the elderly, and young children. While other beans caused bloating and indigestion, mung beans were different. They were gentle on the intestines and nourished without discomfort. Ayurvedic practitioners called them the king of beans. They prescribed mung bean soup, known as mung dal, as the first food given to patients recovering from illness. This was the food you gave your baby when transitioning from breast milk. Not because it tastes good, although it does taste good, but because 4,000 years of empirical observation have taught healers that this bean healed people faster than anything else. Over the ensuing centuries, the mung bean has undergone one of the most remarkable migration routes of any cultivated plant on Earth. They reached Southeast Asia more than 2,200 years ago. Archaeological evidence from southern Thailand confirms that they were established there by at least 200 BC. They arrived in China, where they gained fame during the Han Dynasty and were valued for what traditional Chinese medicine called their cooling properties. The Chinese turned them into glass noodles, jellies, and pastes. They sprouted them and added them to soups. By the time European colonial powers encountered the mung bean in Asia, this tiny green seed had already supported civilizations across the continent for millennia. But here's a detail that matters to this story. Throughout those centuries, in dozens of cultures separated by thousands of miles, one cooking method appeared again and again: sprouting. Indian households sprouted them. Chinese cooks sprouted them. Thai families sprouted them. Japanese cuisine has adopted them so thoroughly that sprouted mung beans have their own name in Japanese: moyashi. Billions of people over thousands of years have independently come to the same conclusion. Something extraordinary happens when you add water to this seed and wait a few days. They didn't have laboratories. They didn't have nutritional science. They simply observed that sprouted mung beans made people healthier, stronger, and more resilient than the dry seed alone. It took modern science until the 21st century to explain why, and what the researchers discovered was to make front-page news around the world. In 2012, a team from Cornell University and Fudan University in Shanghai published a study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. They did something surprisingly simple. They took dried mung bean seeds, germinated them under controlled conditions, and then measured what happened to the nutritional content at each stage of germination. The results challenged every assumption about how food works. Vitamin C, which is virtually absent from dried mung bean seeds at about 50 milligrams per kilogram, exploded during germination. By the 8th day, the sprouts contained up to 1,285 milligrams per kilogram of dry weight. This was not a modest increase. It was about a 24-fold increase in vitamin C, created from nothing but water, air, and time. The seed contained almost no vitamin C. The sprout was overloaded with it. The germination process produced it from scratch. But vitamin C was just the beginning. Total phenolic compounds, antioxidants that protect your cells from oxidative damage associated with cancer, heart disease, and aging, increased 4.5 times. Total flavonoids, another class of powerful antioxidants, increased 6.5 times. And total antioxidant activity, which refers to the food's overall ability to neutralize harmful free radicals in your body, increased 6-fold compared to dry seed. Think about it for a moment. Same seed, same genetics, same physical substance. You added nothing but water in a few days' time, and the result was a food with 6 times the disease-fighting power. The researchers specifically identified a compound called quercetin trioglucoside that increased dramatically during germination. It's not some obscure molecule. Quercetin is one of the most studied antioxidants in nutritional science. The mung bean seed barely contains quercetin, but the sprouted mung bean is chock full of it. The act of sprouting flipped a biochemical switch that took the staple from pantry to drugstore. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. A separate line of research has shown that sprouting doesn't just add good things, it removes bad things. Every legume, including mung beans, contains compounds called anti-nutrients. These are substances such as phytic acid and trypsin inhibitors that interfere with your body's ability to absorb minerals and digest protein. Research published in several papers has found that sprouting mung beans reduces phytic acid by up to 75%. The activity of trypsin inhibitors drops to 39%. Tannins, which interfere with the absorption of nutrients, have decreased by almost 6 times. In simple terms, sprouting increases vitamins, antioxidants, and beneficial compounds while dismantling barriers that might prevent your body from absorbing them. It is as if the seed contained a locked reservoir of nutrition, and germination was the key. The dry bean has nutrition, but it is protected behind chemical walls. Sprouting breaks down those walls and multiplies what is inside. A study of changes in folic acid during sprouting found that mung bean sprouts on the 4th day contained 675 micrograms of folate per 100 grams of fresh weight. This is almost 4 times the concentration found in dry seed. Folic acid is a vitamin critical for DNA synthesis, cell division, and fetal brain development. Pregnant women are told to take folic acid supplements. A can of 4-day-old mung bean sprouts could supply much of this requirement at virtually no cost. No other cooking method on Earth does all of these things at once with this amount of change. But the research didn't stop there. It went somewhere much more significant. On June 3, 2021, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched from Cape Canaveral, carrying cargo to the International Space Station. Among the payload was an experiment called space beans. Mung bean seeds, selected specifically for their protein density, nutritional profile, and rapid germination, were sent into orbit 250 miles above the planet. The team behind the experiment chose mung beans for a reason that echoes everything we've discussed. They are full of protein, vitamins, fiber, and antioxidants, germinate quickly, and require almost nothing to grow. But a separate study has revealed something even more extraordinary about mung beans and space travel. In 2021, Italian researchers published a paper testing mung bean sprouts in simulated space conditions. They exposed germinating mung bean seeds to increasing doses of X-rays, the same type of ionizing radiation that astronauts encounter in deep space. What they found was remarkable. Mung bean sprouts grown under red and blue LED light not only survived the radiation, but actually produced more antioxidant compounds in response to it. The combination of specific wavelengths of light and radiation stress caused the sprouts to produce higher levels of flavonoids and isoflavones. The plant literally created its own radiation shield. NASA's own documentation states that antioxidant-rich foods, such as beans, would have the added benefit of providing some protection from space radiation to crew members. The food that protects astronauts from space radiation on their journey to Mars grows in a jar on your kitchen counter in 5 days. Think about this connection for a moment. The same LED technology that NASA helped develop to grow plants in space is available at your local hardware store. The same seed that sustained Indian civilization for 4,000 years sits in the bulk aisle of your grocery store. The same sprouting process that billions of people across Asia have used for centuries requires nothing more than water and a container you already have. Technology, knowledge, and biology have been available all along. Никто не связал точки для вас, потому что никто не получает прибыль, когда вы делаете это сами. So why do almost no Western households sprout mung beans at home? The three structural forces reinforce each other, and understanding them explains not just mung beans, but the entire architecture of why simple, powerful foods are sidelined. The first force is visual bias. We've been taught since childhood that protein means meat, a thick steak, a fried chicken breast, a carton of eggs. The protein supplement industry reinforces this with images of muscular bodies in industrial-looking powder containers. A jar of tiny white sprouts growing on your windowsill doesn't look like protein to someone raised in Western food culture. It doesn't photograph well for Instagram, and it doesn't come in a package with a nutrition facts panel and bold print that screams 20 grams of protein. But 1 cup of cooked mung beans delivers 14 grams of protein. When sprouting, the protein becomes more digestible and the amino acid profile improves. Mung bean protein isolates have been measured as 87% pure protein with essential amino acids exceeding World Health Organization requirements. The second force is economic incompatibility. A 1-pound bag of dried mung beans costs $2 to $4. This single bag can produce 10 to 15 pounds of sprouts. At grocery store prices, mung bean sprouts sell for $2 to $4 per pound. You just grew $20 to $60 worth of food out of a $4 bag using nothing but water and time. No corporation can build a profitable supply chain around something that multiplies its own volume tenfold in your kitchen. No equipment manufacturer sells specialized tractors for sprouting mung beans. Now, I promised you a 5-minute setup. Here's exactly how to do it. I want you to understand something before I start. What I'm about to describe will seem too simple. You'll think I'm skipping steps. I'm not skipping steps. The reason this works is because the mung bean seed already contains everything it needs for the first stage of life. Thousands of years of evolutionary engineering are packed into a tiny green ball. You are not farming, you are not gardening. You are starting a biological program that the seed has been waiting to accomplish from the moment it was collected. All you provide is humidity, air circulation, and a little patience. Here's what you need. First, a wide-mouth jar. A standard tin can works perfectly. A large drinking glass works. A clean recycled pickle jar works. any container with a wide opening that allows air to circulate. Secondly, a breathable lid for the jar, a piece of gauze secured with an elastic band, is the classic method. A fine mesh strainer lid, sold specifically for sprouting, costs about $3 and lasts forever. Even a piece of clean window screen cut to size will work. The cover needs to be breathable and secure. Third, mung beans. Buy dried whole mung beans at any grocery store, Asian market, or online retailer. A 1-pound bag costs $2 to $4 and will produce several batches of sprouts. Make sure they are whole, not split, or treated with any chemicals. Fourth, clean water. Filtered tap water is fine. If your water is highly chlorinated, leave it in an open container overnight. Here's the process. Measure out about a 1/4 cup of dried mung beans. This seems like a small amount, and this is the first surprise. Mung beans expand dramatically when sprouted. This 1/4 cup of dry beans will fill the entire jar with sprouts within a few days. Rinse the beans thoroughly under running water, removing any broken, discolored, or floating beans. Place the rinsed beans in your jar and cover them with about 3 inches of cool water. Cover the jar with your cheesecloth or mesh lid and let them soak for 8 to 12 hours. Overnight is ideal. This soaking phase is critical. It activates the enzymes inside the seed, softens the outer shell, and signals to the dormant embryo that conditions are right for growth. The process of dismantling anti-nutrients begins here. Phytic acid begins to break down. Trypsin inhibitors begin to degrade. The chemical barriers that protected the seed's nutrition begin to dissolve. After soaking, drain all the water through your mesh lid. Rinse the beans with fresh water and drain thoroughly again. This is important. The beans should be moist, not submerged. Standing water breeds bacteria. Good air circulation is what you need. Now, invert the jar at an angle into a bowl or dish drainer so excess water can continue to drain and air can circulate freely. Place the jar in an area away from direct sunlight. A kitchen counter, a pantry shelf, inside a cabinet. Mung beans grow well in the dark, which is actually an advantage because it means you don't need a windowsill, grow lamp, or any special location. Twice a day, morning and evening, rinse the sprouts with fresh water and drain thoroughly. This is the entire maintenance regimen. 10 seconds twice a day, rinse and drain. This is what happens over the next 3 to 5 days, and I mean this seriously. It will feel like watching a magic trick in slow motion. Within 24 hours, tiny white tails appear from the beans. The seeds have cracked. Life is apparently happening inside your jar. By the second day, these ponytails had grown into roots 1/2 inch long, and the volume inside the jar had increased noticeably. By the third day, the sprouts are 1 to 2 inches long, thick, crisp white stems with small, pale yellow tips. A jar that started out a 1/4 full is now 1/2 full or more. By day 4 or 5, you have a jar overflowing with crispy, fresh, live sprouts. The original 1/4 cup of dry beans has multiplied in volume by about 8 to 10 times. You're holding a can of food that didn't exist 5 days ago. Food that contains 6 times the antioxidants of dry seeds, 27 times the vitamin C, almost 4 times the folic acid. Food that is alive, that was still growing 5 minutes ago before you ate it. When was the last time you could say that about something you took out of the refrigerator? Give them a final rinse. Gently swirl the sprouts in a bowl of clean water to float any loose seed coats. Drain well. They're ready to eat immediately. Or store them in a paper towel-lined container in the refrigerator for 3 to 5 days. But I'll tell you from experience, they taste best eaten within hours of that final rinse. The crunch is extraordinary. The flavor is clean, slightly sweet with a fresh nuttiness that nothing in a plastic bag at the store can match. Now here's what will happen the first time you do this. You'll look at a jar overflowing with fresh sprouts that didn't exist a few days ago and feel like you've cheated. There is no way that so much food, so alive, so nutritionally dense could grow from a handful of beans and tap water in a jar on your countertop. But it was so, and the taste will confirm it. Fresh mung bean sprouts, eaten minutes after their final rinse, have a crispness and vitality that store-bought sprouts simply cannot match. That's the difference between a tomato from your garden and one shipped across the country in a refrigerated truck. Multiply that difference by 5. This is what homemade sprouted mung beans taste like. Magnify this in your mind. 3 jars on your countertop, started 2 days apart. A rotational cycle where you start a new jar every 2 days and harvest from another. For a week, you have continuous fresh sprouts available every day. A constant living food of a few cans, water, and a $3 bag of dried beans. That's it, and the culinary versatility will surprise you. Toss them raw into salads for a protein-rich crunch that takes the place of croutons entirely. Fry them with garlic, ginger, and soy sauce for a classic Asian dish that cooks in 3 minutes. Add them to soups in the last 30 seconds to help them retain their texture. Wrap them in spring rolls with rice paper, herbs, and shrimp or tofu. Blend them into smoothies for a whole food protein boost that beats processed powders. In Korean cuisine, mung bean sprouts form the basis of a favorite side dish called sukjun namu, seasoned with sesame oil and garlic. In Vietnamese pho, they are an essential raw side dish, piled on top of the steaming broth. In Indian cuisine, sprouted mung beans are eaten as a complete meal called mung bean salad, mixed with lemon juice, onion, tomato, cilantro, and green chilies. Billions of people already know this. The knowledge was never lost, it was simply never transmitted to the Western world. But perhaps the most powerful thing about sprouting mung beans at home is what it does for your relationship with food. There is something deeply satisfying about producing your own food from start to finish. No supply chain, no middleman, no wondering how old the products are or where they came from or what was sprayed on them. You are in control of everything. You know exactly when it was picked because you picked it yourself 30 seconds before it touched your plate. Parents who have introduced sprouting to their children report something remarkable. Children who refuse to eat vegetables enjoy munching on mung bean sprouts that they have grown themselves. There is something about watching a seed crack, send out a root, and grow into food inside a jar on the kitchen counter that fundamentally reprograms a child's understanding of where food comes from. It's no longer something that comes out of a store in a plastic package. It's something alive, something they helped create, something they can eat with their own hands moments after harvest. This experience cannot be submitted. One of the reasons you rarely hear about sprouting from mainstream sources is that it disrupts 3 industries at once. The $170 billion supplement industry sells you isolated vitamins in capsules. A can of mung bean sprouts delivers vitamin C, vitamin K, folic acid, polyphenols, and bioavailable protein in whole food form for a few cents per serving. The trillion-dollar processed food industry depends on you believing that convenient food requires factories, supply chains, and preservatives. Sprouts grow themselves in your no-till kitchen. The meat and dairy industry that dominates the Western protein message depends on you associating protein with animal products. Mung beans contain up to 31% protein by dry weight. Sprouting makes this protein more digestible. No corporation benefits when you make your own vitamins, antioxidants, and protein in a can. And here's the blow. The global sprout market is worth $4.5 billion and growing. The mung bean sprout segment holds the highest market share, with the largest consumer base being households. People are already buying the product in mass quantities. They're buying mung bean sprouts in plastic bags at grocery stores instead of growing them in jars on their own countertops. Here's what they never wanted you to understand. Food sovereignty does not require land, money, expertise, equipment, or permission from anyone. One of the most nutritionally dense, antioxidant-rich, protein-packed foods ever explored by modern science, it grows in any jar, in any climate, in any apartment, in any season. The ancient Indian farmers who domesticated this bean 4,500 years ago knew it was special. It took modern science 4 millennia to prove them right. The mung bean is not just a bean. It is a compressed biological program waiting for water, and a few days to carry out the transformation that multiplies vitamin C 27 times. Each jar you sprout is another expression of this program. Mung beans write the chapter on balanced protein and cellular protection. Lentils write the chapter on iron. Broccoli seeds write the chapter on cancer prevention. Radish seeds write the chapter on digestive enzymes. You're not farming, you're overseeing a live pharmacy that's updated every 5 days. And unlike any drugstore you've ever visited, this one costs less than a cup of coffee to stock and doesn't require a prescription. The seed already knows what to do. It is known for millions of years. He just needs water, air, and time. 5 minutes to set up, 3 to 5 days to harvest, 6 times the antioxidants, 27 times the vitamin C. No soil, no sunlight, no permit required. The only question remaining is whether you will start. If you found this valuable, watch the next video because it goes even deeper. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. See you in the next episode.